good afternoon, or depending on where you are, good morning or good evening. Welcome alumni, students, and friends of the University of Toronto. My name is John French, and I'm the director of the University of Toronto Entrepreneurship, or UTE, where I support entrepreneurial initiatives across U of T's tri-campus, as well as industry, government, and other partners who are fostering innovation. I'd like to thank you for joining us here today for our latest installment of Disruptors and Dilemmas, founding and leading your startup in uncertain times. I'd like to begin with our land acknowledgement statement. I wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. We are delighted today to feature 4 alumni who will be sharing their insights on navigating the entrepreneurial ecosystem in 2022 and beyond. The U of T has a strong reputation for producing excellence in entrepreneurship. In the last decade alone, U of T entrepreneurs have created more than 600 venture-backed or VC-backed companies. They've secured more than $2.5 billion in investment in areas that include AI, artificial intelligence and machine learning, quantum computing, health and life sciences, and clean tech. We are Canada's leading engine for research-based startups and a global leader in transforming ideas into products and services that impact the world. U of T entrepreneurship is a central voice that I always describe as the glue or the connective tissue for entrepreneurship across U of T's 3 campuses and represents a powerful network of over 10 campus accelerators. We are striving to create an environment that is inclusive and representative of the diverse and talented innovators and entrepreneurs that are all around us. A couple of examples relevant to today. I know many of you are alumni of the Faculty of Applied Science and Engineering. You might be familiar with the Hatchery, that is the accelerator that works closest with students, alum, and faculty. The Hatchery just celebrated its 10th anniversary and delivers a number of unique and powerful programs. One of our panelists today is from the U of T Scarborough campus, where there are 2 accelerators, the Hub and the Bridge. I know we've got alum from Arts and Science. FAS has the Center for Entrepreneurship, which will have a physical footprint on the new Schwartz-Reisman Innovation Campus going up at the intersection of college and university, and is slated to open early in the 2023 academic year. That's the building and the campus where our UTest accelerator for research-based startups will also be housed, along with the Vector Institute for Artificial Intelligence and OnRamp, which is kind of my team's headquarters and is the co-working and event space for U of T startups. Our location in Toronto, within one of the world's most diverse and innovative cities, with a burgeoning technology industry, world-class hospital network, and robust financial services sector, further strengthens U of T's innovation ecosystem. And innovation and entrepreneurship are pivotal elements to what we do here at the university, and that's why they're core pillars of the Defy Gravity fundraising campaign. Through the campaign, alumni, and supporters, we're helping to prioritize these areas and these initiatives to ensure our continued strength in this area. Today, we're thrilled and honored to have Sandra Odendahl, act as today's moderator. Sandra is the Senior VP and Head of Sustainability at Business Development Bank of Canada. She's a proud U of T alumna with a master's degree in chemical engineering, and Sandra's career has focused on social innovation initiatives and sustainability projects, and she's passionate about helping entrepreneurs obtain the funding they need to bring their ideas to life. Please join me in welcoming Sandra.
Thanks very much, John. Thank you, everyone. I'm so excited to moderate the discussion with fellow UT alumni, Melissa Ellis, Lauren Epstein, and Casper Wong. And we're going to be talking about founding and leading your startup in uncertain times. So as John already mentioned, and as many of the viewers are already aware, I just want to reiterate that Disruptors and Dilemmas is originally a speaker series from the Faculty of Applied Science and Engineering, but today's event is a special collaboration between U of T Engineering, the University of Toronto Scarborough, the Rotman School of Management, the Faculty of Arts and Science, and the Faculty of Law. So lots of diverse thinking and lots of great ideas when you consider the combination of all those disciplines and skills. So without further ado, as moderator, it's my honor to introduce you to our panelists for today's discussion. And I'm going to ask the panelists to click on their cameras as I introduce them. I'm going to start with Melissa Ellis. So Melissa is no stranger at the University of Toronto. She's a graduate of history and law at the Scarborough campus. She was an active volunteer with the Black Student Association, and she now gives back through her involvement with the Black Founders Network. So her contributions have made a tremendous impact on the U of T community. She's had an extensive career in the tech space before she became the founder of Nobellum, a company aimed at creating space for Black entrepreneurs around the world in the tech industry. We're going to be hearing a lot more about that in the panel discussion. Welcome, Melissa. Next, I want to introduce you to Lauren Epstein. So Lauren is a principal at Stand Up Ventures, a VC firm that aims to help female founders to make an impact in the tech economy. Lauren brings to the table an extensive set of experience in a variety of fields, including as a political researcher, a corporate litigation lawyer. She's been a speechwriter and, of course, a venture investor. She's also an associate with the Creative Destruction Lab and a mentor at Next 36 and the Holt Accelerator. Lauren's an alumna of Harvard University with a BA in government and a dual JD MBA program here at U of T. Welcome, Lauren. And our third panelist is Arts and Science alumni Casper Wong. Casper is the co-founder and president of Finance It, a company that helps businesses offer fair and transparent payment plans to customers anywhere in the world. Finance It has signed thousands of merchant partners that process billions in sales per year through their platform, and they've grown from 10 employees in 2011 to over 250 workers today. And Finance It was named one of Canada's top growing companies in both 2020 and in 2021. So I want to say welcome to you, Casper. And now I'd like to jump into our panel discussion. So I want to start with a question that I'm going to put to each of the three panelists. So the theme of our panel today is founding and leading your startup in uncertain times. And of course, over the last few years, as the pandemic has changed the way we work, there's actually been a significant rise in interest in entrepreneurship. I don't know, maybe it's because everybody was working from home anyway. It was like, maybe I should be working for myself. I don't know, we can explore that. But what I'd like to do is start by each of you sharing your role in the entrepreneurship ecosystem. So tell us basically a bit about what you do, and then also talk about, if you don't mind, how you see it having shifted in the last few years. So if you could take about 3 minutes to do that, that would be great. Melissa, can we start with you?
Yes, absolutely. For me, in the past few years, I've seen a huge shift. So being in the software engineering and tech space, often recognizing that there is a huge, almost like a transition of wealth happening. I recognize that it was really important for me to get into this space and also create access for other leaders and entrepreneurs from the Black community. And so one of the things that has really inspired me over the past few years has been really recognizing that a lot of founders from the Black community don't get the same access. And so launching Nobellum and an organization to support Black entrepreneurs has been really essential. And, it's interesting because when you mentioned that oftentimes people who are at home, they're thinking, what can I do to be a little bit more entrepreneurial? I actually ended up shifting into contracting a lot more. And, for anybody here who's listening to this, who's probably hasn't explored that, one of the things I recognized was when you're an employee, you're limited in a lot of ways. And I was kind of exposed to the opportunities that come with being able to consult your services and contract your services. And this is something that I've been also exploring and teaching others from the community. So.
Great, thank you. That's great. A great outline about your sort of your journey, but also how you've seen it shift and in fact, how you've capitalized on a change in thinking through the pandemic. Lauren, why don't I jump to you? Same question, tell us a little bit about your role and what you do in the entrepreneurship ecosystem, and if you've seen it shift in the last few years.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here on this amazing panel and speaking with other U of T alums. Secondly, let me apologize for my voice. Yesterday, I came down with the flu. So bonus that we're doing this virtually because I could still do it. But I'll do my best not to sound too croaky. As you mentioned, Sandra, I spent a number of years as a commercial litigator. So if I, depending on sort of the last few years and what that means, if you extend it back long enough, part of it was doing a big career pivot and leaving law, like first leaving private practice, leaving law altogether, making my way into the VC, into the innovation ecosystem. So insofar as folks are interested in that transition, happy to talk about it. I've now held a number of different roles within specifically the investment space. So investing in early stage technology companies, originally at a family office at the sort of angel stage, very, very early. Then I moved to Omers Ventures, which is one of the largest venture funds in Canada, focusing on Series A and Series B. So those are companies that really have started to achieve, material amounts of traction, doing sort of $1 or $2+ million a year in revenue. And then just over a year ago, switched to Stand Up Ventures. And that's a very happy story for me. It was the culmination, well, hopefully not the culmination, actually, now that I say that, it came about as a result of my multi-year friendship with a woman named Michelle McBain, who had been a mentor of mine. I know, Sandra, you know her from U of T engineering, if I'm right.
U of O, actually, our undergrad engineering.
Oh, yeah. Right. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. We've known each other forever.
And she is a phenomenal person and had been a wonderful mentor to me. And she started Stand Up Ventures, which is the venture capital fund where I now work. And in early 2021, we started talking about my joining her as sort of her 2IC and helping build out the platform. And I ended up joining in September of 2021, and it was like Cinderella with that glass slipper. It just has been such a perfect fit of culture and team and ethos. And so, as you mentioned, we are a venture capital fund. Our investment thesis is that we invest in companies that are led or co-led by women. And it's important to note that we're not a social impact fund or a double bottom line fund. We're very proud of the social impact that our work has, but we are measured exclusively based on returns. And it is, we made a commitment to our investors, our LPs, to go out and hopefully invest in some fantastic companies to make great returns for them. And the basis on which we do that is by investing in what we see as a higher potential category of founder and of company. And I can talk more about sort of the underlying foundation of that thesis. But we are happy to be on our second fund, $35 million fund that launched last year. We have 16 companies in our first fund and have made 6 investments out of that second fund, and probably will make sort of 20-ish over the course of the next few years.
Great.
And I just being able to work with phenomenal founders across the country is just that's what gets me up every day.
Nice. Well, that's great. You can tell that you have a lot of passion and enthusiasm for it. Casper, what about you? Same, same thing. Tell us a little bit about your role in the ecosystem, about your company, but also how you've seen a shift in the last few years with the pandemic, or for other reasons that may be unique to your organization.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Sandra. And I just want to
Sure.
start off by saying it's a pleasure to be on this panel with some really impressive women. And I've been on a lot of panels. Most panels are dudes in suits. So I'm glad that's not this panel. And also for the students out there, my background is I was a undergrad at U of T at Innis College. Thought I was going to be a lawyer, ended up going into investment banking and then finding myself as an entrepreneur. So, and I wasn't a great student. I thought I was going to be a lawyer, then realized I didn't have the grades to get into law school. So I had to make some pivots early on. So one of my favorite quotes is, you can't connect the dots looking forward, but you can do it backwards, right? And so, life is super unpredictable. And I think there's some shared stories today on the panel that will hopefully provide you with some insight as you're navigating your future. But yeah, listen, I think, maybe I'll start at a high level in terms of the business that I'm a co-founder of Finance that we started back in 2010, right before fintech was a word, and trying to build like a financial services company in Canada. And we've been very fortunate. We've attracted, some pretty significant investors over the years. Goldman Sachs invested over 150 million in the company. We recently sold earlier this year. I think it was one of the largest financial exits for a fintech company in the history of Canada for close to $400 million to another private equity firm based in New York. And it's been really a journey to kind of see how much has kind of changed maybe the landscape for Canadian tech and fundraising and kind of the fintech industry in total. And I'm happy to talk more about that. But yeah, I think, some of the insights and high level stuff I wanted to share as part of my intro is that, when I first started, my career as a kind of leaving university to start work, I had an idea that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't have the confidence of exactly what it was I wanted to do. So I knew I needed to get some work experience and make some connections. And so I was able to, find a position in investment banking. And when I was at BMO in the M&A department, I was recruited actually by the CEO of a company called GoEasy to help them kind of lead new business initiatives. And while I was there at GoEasy, which is a publicly traded company, they had like kind of an incubator business they were working on in the lending space called Easy Financial. And I kind of got very interested in that and helped them to develop an online strategy of how to scale that business beyond their brick and mortar stores. And this is kind of 2008, 2009. And this is actually in the middle of the financial crisis. So it was an interesting time to be thinking about starting a new business and getting into lending. But yeah, ended up learning a lot about the infrastructure and the actual kind of concepts required to do something like that. And then I decided that this was an interesting space that I wanted to participate in and build in. And then I had this idea, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to be an entrepreneur working at a publicly traded company, but I still had that North Star, which is like, I want to be an entrepreneur. So then I left and I started to do more research on talking to other entrepreneurs in online lending at the time. And there were only a few people doing it in Canada. And that's when I met my co-founder, who was also in the middle of a pivot. And we found this opportunity where we both saw this opportunity in online lending. After the financial crisis of 2008, a lot of US lenders were pulling out of Canada, especially US point of sale lenders like Wells Fargo and HSBC and GE, right? And it had left a bit of a vacuum in the space. And so we were actually doing our research and talking to businesses, and they were saying, listen, we really love it if you could kind of help us build a solution to address this need that we have. And so we were very successful and kind of lucky with the timing of that opportunity. And then we were also very successful and lucky in convincing our first bank lender, ING Canada, to take a risk and work with us and be our first lender. So, that first year we did 10 million in originations, and then, fast forward 12 years, we're closing in on $1 billion a year now. So it's been an incredible journey. Thank you. And it has not been easy. And there's more to say, but
Yeah.
I love to say that the themes are, if you do want to be an entrepreneur, it's not always going to be obvious what the path will be. I think a lot of people have this idea that you can kind of like figure it out sitting inside in a room, and that was not my experience. And I think it's great to have that interest, but I really feel strongly that in order to refine your knowledge and to get the confidence, you need to go out there, you need to connect with other people, you need to go to conferences, you need to be in industries, and kind of go deep, right? And go as deep as you can to figure out, hey, like, is there a product market fit? Is there something that I can solve here? I had this idea, okay, before I execute on it and commit a bunch of stuff, I need to talk to like customers and investors and other people in the space, right? So I think that really is part of the kind of the beginning. And as a result of COVID and some of the themes, I think we can talk about it more today, but I think there's been a pretty dramatic shift, as everyone is aware of, around like the tech space, right? Like I think we have made a very dramatic shift from growth and revenue-based multiples in terms of narrative-based investing to companies really and valuations that are now based on like more fundamental kind of foundational stuff like earnings multiples, profitability, maybe more boring stuff, but that will definitely have an impact on the fundraising landscape and for future entrepreneurs. But
so the pandemic has affected the way people are evaluating what they're looking for in investments in startups.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Lauren would have a lot more experience in this as an investor. But,
yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah.
But I mentor a few early stage companies who have raised some money and looking to fundraise, and they're definitely feeling that, right? In terms of, hey, what are the things I need to do to kind of make sure I'm setting my business up for success? It doesn't feel like I can raise money just on a growth multiple like we used to.
Right.
What does 2023 look like? And I also think that in every recession, there have always been tremendous opportunities for new business models to emerge, right? So if you look at the last recession, we had the rise of like these kind of service-based SaaS companies like Uber and Airbnb, right? And so I'm sure there will be other opportunities that come out of this kind of change in the environment.
Right. Thank you very much. That's great. So Melissa, I want to go back to you. Actually, I know that you were having some technical problems in the first round, and but I wanted to ask you anyway, and I invite you to take a couple of minutes to talk about this. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to start Nobellum. And I mean, you talked about an observation that entrepreneurs in the Black community needed additional support, but maybe you can talk about first of all, exactly what it is that that Nobellum does, and what, as you were inspired and as you were started getting it off the ground, what learnings do you think are most transferable to anyone starting a new endeavor?
Yes, thank you, Sandra. And I kept seeing the internet unstable sign, and
I hate that.
No, but thank you. And ironically enough, what kind of inspired Nobellum was quite personal. I actually found myself stumbling into the DEI space, not necessarily because I trained for it, but because I was living it. And having that background in software engineering and tech, I was working and leading a lot of digital transformation projects. And one of those projects, we were doing an ERP implementation. It was about a $5 million project. And the entire time from beginning to end, there wasn't a single Black stakeholder, not a single Black tech professional or tech vendor. And I kind of found myself in that project experiencing a lot of groupthink, where everyone's kind of thinking a certain way, approaching problems in a certain way. And, seeing this massive pipeline is like seeing this massive transition of wealth, and our community is just getting left behind. And I thought, what if we had more diverse voices? Maybe we would have more creative responses to some of the problems we were facing. And of course, I was venting to different members of my community. And with those conversations, it kind of evolved into consultations around what can we do and what within our resources, what can we actually change? And that's kind of what gave birth and inspired the Novellum Innovator Program, which has 3 really important components. It starts off with a pitch. And I know when I was in school and I would go to pitch contests, I would literally fall asleep because they would be so boring. And what we do at Novellum is we really incorporate our culture, have a little bit of pitching and then some poetry and some more pitching and then some dance. And how do we fuse in our culture to expose you who may not ever be exposed to tech or even an accelerator, an incubator? To be quite honest, in the last year, I've explained the concept of what an incubator even is to over 150 Black youth. And it just goes to show that how can we even compete in this space when we don't even know it exists? And as I'm hearing, Lauren and Casper speak, I am blown away by what they're doing. And I want my community to be more exposed to this. And so, after the pitch, we incubate them through a series of workshops, connecting them with coaches, people who are in a position to help them get loan ready, to get investment ready. And then we have an app. And so basically what this app does is, now that they've received funding, where do they go for support? Oftentimes, this is another barrier in our community. We're often forced to go elsewhere and into foreign spaces just to grow our business. And so what this app does is it connects you with people from the BIPOC community who offer services in legal, financing, marketing, engineering, so that you can grow your app and also get mentorship and support from people who look like you, who have experiences like you. And so currently, very happy to say we kicked off our pitch last year. We had over 545 applicants. And it was funny because when we first started, there were actually people in the investor space that were like, yeah, we would invest in more diverse startups, but there aren't any. It just goes to show there are a lot. They just need that guidance to kind of get from point A to point B. And so now we are currently incubating 10 of those startups. And it's a variety of different areas. We have from tech and AI to cosmetics and AI to mental health and chatbots. And there's just a lot of different needs that they're filling. And so going back to my learnings on this journey, one of the things I often find that we do when we have a great idea is we want to protect it. We want to keep it to ourselves. And sometimes we're actually shooting ourselves in the foot. And so what I did actually was the opposite. I obviously didn't disclose all the most sensitive, juicy details, but I talked to people in my network that I trusted. I sought out advisors. In fact, I was reaching out to people on LinkedIn, anybody who would listen to my pitch. And that eventually brought me to old bosses and to an old teacher who ended up connecting me with leaders at the University of Toronto. And I'm really happy to say that actually gave birth to now a 5-year partnership with the University of Toronto Scarborough campus, where we have a fund. John French has been a really great partner in that. And essentially they're supporting with matching funding for this mandate. And our mandate is to support the startup of at least 100 Black-owned businesses in STEM by 2025. And so with the University of Toronto, we're incubating these startups, and it really is a full circle moment when you can go back to your home campus and create an initiative like this and partner with something that is, really passionate and close to home. So
thank you. Melissa, quick question. How are you funded? How is your initiative funded?
Initially, it was all bootstrapping. Okay. To get funding from different grants, as well as through our app, we are also working on a social enterprise model where we're subscribing businesses to the platform. And so a combination of funding from grants and sponsorships as well.
Yeah. Right. So let's say if I wanted BDC, for example, to appear on your app, there's sort of a business arrangement that could be made. Is that what you mean?
BDC would be more of a sponsor.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, just to thank you. That was I was very interested in the social enterprise model, and other people might be as well. So it's fundamentally it's a combination of bootstrapping, grants, and then some sort of business transactions that also bring in revenue. If that's correct. Yeah. Cool. And sponsorships. Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to dig in a little bit to some of the comments that the panelists made in their opening remarks. Casper, I'm going to jump to you. So what's really interesting, you sort of touched on it, but I want to, I want to dig in a little bit to, like, you guys thrived during the pandemic. Finance It thrived. So, which is great. A lot of early stage companies are sort of in some, I mean, it's a good problem to have, but can be somewhat overwhelmed and face some significant challenges if they grow much more quickly than they had ever expected. I'm not sure if that was the case. Maybe this is exactly what you expected. Can you talk a little bit about, though, the transformation of having a smaller startup that suddenly grows into something quite big in the hundreds of millions and billions of dollars? What does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, our journey's been about 12 years now, so I don't think anything has felt quick for us.
You're a 12-year overnight success.
Yeah, 12-year overnight success. That's quick. But, yeah, I think if you kind of look at the year we're having now in 2022, we are having the best year on record. Growth is incredible. We're profitable. Our employees are very happy. Our investors are happy, and we've gotten here definitely not by luck, right? When you kind of look at where we are now, and we've had some discussions with this with existing employees and past employees. We've been on a journey actually over the last 3 or 4 years where we had a very clear set of objectives and ways of making good decisions that focused on optimizing for growth, but also optimizing for profitability, and have invested in a lot of different areas in the company, right? Like automation and making sure that we're scaling efficiently, making sure our unit economics are all kind of expanding. We've been, focused on de-risking the business, as part of COVID, right? Adding additional lending capital, renegotiating relationships. We actually turned down some very significant business opportunities because the economics didn't make sense for us, right? We looked at, let's say, the BNPL model, and quite frankly, the math just didn't add up, right? And we're seeing how that's playing out now.
You should define BNPL model for the
right.
non-startup nerds.
Buy now, pay later, right? So it's a relatively new business model. I think that popped up in the last 2 or 3 years, focused on e-commerce. And companies like Affirm are kind of focused on that space. And it was getting a ton of press and crazy valuations up until about earlier this year. I mean, Affirm went public, I think, at $40 a share. They peaked at $112, $150 a share. Now they're trading at $10 a share, right? And that kind of talks to the change in the landscape. And the reason for that is they had tremendous growth. They had partnerships with some big names, but their unit economics, they weren't making money. That was the bottom line. They were not making money. They weren't profitable. And when we did the math on some buy now, pay later opportunities that came our way with huge relationships, right? Multi-billion-dollar retailers, we chose not to bid, or we chose not to price in a way that would put us in a position where we were not going to feel strong about the margins. So I think, we're in a good position because we made a lot of good decisions, focused on like the fundamentals, and invested in the right areas of the company. And as a result, that internal decision making has been very beneficial. So that's part of it. The second part is, I think our industry is very interesting. So we are focused on the home improvement space, right? And we work with, some of the biggest companies, some great companies in the home improvement space in Canada, like Home Depot, and with big business in the HVAC space, which is, for those of you that don't own a home, that's heating, air conditioning, and water tanks, and that's
heating, ventilation, and air conditioning.
That's right. Yes. And if you ever own a home and you need to replace any of those systems, that is not a cheap thing, and it's not a fun thing. No one looks at their home and says, "Hey, listen, I'm going to upgrade my air conditioner because it's a very expensive thing because it's broken." And so we work in these industries where sometimes they're grudge purchases, and the consumer is not planning for it, but they're not discretionary spend. And so as we look at kind of the home improvement market, We have some very resilient verticals, which are recession-proof, and our business model is really built on working with these merchants, these businesses, who are, paying us a fee to offer their customers a great deal, right? Like 0% financing and stuff like that. So even though the home sales market is slowing down, people are still making big renovations to their homes. Some people are choosing to stay in their homes and spend more money there than transacting. So part of our growth has also come from, I guess just the overall business we're in, which is in person, big ticket, focused on prime consumers, focused on improving their homes, which is it's a very interesting segment, and we've been fortunate to build it out. In Canada alone, the home improvement industry is worth 70 billion in annual sales, right? So
Nice.
we're very fortunate that we're focused on the Canadian market, where you can build a really large business just focusing on Canada. A lot of companies that are started in Canada, they have to expand beyond Canada because the markets usually are not big enough in one country.
Right.
So that's part of it too, is we're in a big space that's very resilient, especially with all these changes. And then third, we had this transaction, and our previous investors are great, and our new investors are also really great. Not going to say who's better, but we have great investors, and they've taken a long view on the business, right? And because all of our fundamentals are really strong, we're profitable, we're growing, we have a lot of stability, a lot of demand. We feel, and we're private, it's a good time to be a private company, right? We'd rather be private than public right now, so we don't have to deal with the day-to-day complexities of your share price and all that stuff. And we can focus on the long term. That's really benefited us versus the quarterly cycle of being a publicly traded company.
Yeah. Good. Thank you very much. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. You were.
I'm good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've also, if I were to sum up what I've heard, it's there was a certain amount of discipline in your approach that over the decade leading into COVID that enabled you to continue to thrive and grow through COVID, which is really important. Lauren, as an investor, I guess, you were hearing from the entrepreneurs who go out, who seek different models to finance their endeavors. Curious to hear from you. And again, for the benefit of people in the audience who may be thinking of starting a business or maybe thinking about doing some VC investing themselves, some angel investing, what are the top, I'm going to say, if you can keep it to the top 3 or 4 things that you look for and that an entrepreneur should be making sure they've got lined up properly before you would consider an investment?
So first, I'm going to say that if you ask different venture capitalists, I think you'll get different answers, but you'll hear some of the same themes because different people have different views and different funds have different theses.
Would love to hear the universal rules, maybe, because
yeah,
we could probably talk about this for 2 days, but
definitely.
What are the things that pretty much you can't ignore no matter what?
Yeah. And so the other thing I was going to say is that it depends on the stage. So we invest primarily at the seed stage. So what that typically means, and we pretty well exclusively invest in software. And we do exclusively invest in, a lot of caveats, B2B software. So companies that sell to other companies. And it could anywhere from selling into the SMB market, small, medium-sized businesses, into enterprise. But at the seed stage, what that's going to look like is maybe a few $100,000 or up to maybe $500,000 of early annual revenue. The beginnings of some indication of product market fit, i.e., people want what you're building, early indications that you've sort of figured out a repeatable sales model. The lingo there is go to market. I'm always aware not to use too much lingo. But I think so it very much depends on the stage. one sort of rubric you can use that might be somewhat universal, and that we use from time to time is the 4 T's, which is the 4 categories on which we might assess a company: team, timing, traction, and technology. For us, I think team is by far the most important. We are very focused on partnering with incredible founding teams. And I think our founders tend to, I mean, as I mentioned, we back companies that are led or co-led by women. So some of our companies have solo female founders. I think one has 2 female founders, and all the rest are a combination of men and women. So we've got obviously a lot of women founders, but a lot of men. But our founders tend to be extremely authentic, extremely driven, very thesis focused, open-minded. You'll hear, like, we talk a lot about the growth mindset. They're very rigorous. And we're very intentional about who we partner with, because a big part of what we do is create a real community among our founders.
Right.
And that's not true necessarily of all funds. But just on the other 3, traction, timing, technology, that's more about, the state of your business, the state of your product, how built out it is, and the state of the market. So what kind of market are you selling into?
Yeah. It's funny, you're reminding me, I once worked with a seasoned venture capital investor who told me, you have to focus on the management team, because the first thing to know is that whatever you read, of all the possible permutations and combinations of outcomes in the universe, the one that will never happen is whatever's written on that business plan. And the second thing you have to realize is pick a company with a team, invest in companies with a team that you feel like you'll be happy sitting in a room with them with pizza and beer into the wee hours of the night, trying to figure out how to get them out of some mess, or how to get some opportunity done really quickly under pressure.
And we do that sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it really is a partnership. And in terms of the folks on the call who are thinking about starting companies or have started a company, I really encourage you to look at your potential investors in the same light, assess them. Would you want to have a beer with them? Can you see them being good partners for 10 years? And I'm sure Casper and Melissa can talk about this as well, but it really is more than about dollars.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm going to jump over to Melissa on that note. So Melissa, you actually talked about some of the things Lauren talked about. Oh, and actually, before I do that, I want to remind anyone listening, please fire some questions into the Q&A chat. I'm going to flip over to some audience questions in a couple of minutes. So yeah, Melissa, well, one of the things that Lauren said that I thought was interesting was about, learning from, I can't remember the exact words, but I think you said something about, Melissa, you said something about talking to a lot of people, really being open to advice and information. And you're sort of on this constant journey of acquiring information, and it's a growth mindset. To me, that sounds a lot like a growth mindset, which is the terminology Lauren used. But I'm interested in how the ability, so let's say you've got your growth mindset, you've got your good idea, you've got something that people actually want to buy. But do you think that financing, whether it's debt or equity financing, is more difficult for startups that are founded by people from the BIPOC community, or is it still pretty agnostic? Like, if you have a good idea and the investor feels like they can make money and they can sit in a room with you and drink beer and eat pizza and work out problems, are you good? Or are there more challenges for the BIPOC community?
You're right. It is something that's constantly evolving and organic, almost like when you start a startup, it creates its own life. But in response to the experiences that we've had, it's no secret that, only 2% of venture funding raised in North America went to Black-led companies back in 2021, I believe. And so, are you hearing me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah. And so with those statistics in mind, when I look at the experiences that my founders are currently experiencing, it's very much aligned with that. I do think another thing that plays a role in it is tech startups in general sometimes do have a harder time qualifying for investments or loans just because it is a little bit riskier. Sometimes you need to have an MVP in place or some kind of a product that you can show. And so that's why our program is very intentional about all the startups going through our cohort. We try to get them an MVP, fully built out by the end so that they can have something that they can demo to potential investors, or at least a pilot where they have spoken with their customer base and they have some data around the need and what changes they need to make. But working towards changing or increasing access to investments, to loans, even to the angel community has been a constant part of our strategy. One of the key things that we are doing is, yes, we can work with the partners, but also ensuring that the people in our program are educated and aware about what they need to do. Simple things around their personal credit is very much tied to their access to business loans, and demystifying myths around loans, around how investments work, and then strengthening their IP. Oftentimes, actually, I would say, if not 99, maybe 95% of the startups coming into our program have no concept of how to protect their IP or that they even have intellectual property. And these are some of the things that makes them really attractive to, potential investors. And so arming them, preparing them, but as well as building partnerships with, the angel community, with the investment community to create, to let them see that, we are almost like vetting, training, and building out these startups so that they could one day be investment ready for these programs. But the barriers, they are very real. And I think in these conversations and working alongside people that are on the other side of the fence is a really instrumental way of kind of breaking down and chipping away barriers.
Yeah. Good. Thanks. That's super interesting. I think that leads me to a question for Casper, because Casper, and the thread I want to pull in what you said, Melissa, is partly about the challenges for people, some of the people in the BIPOC community who maybe have less experience with where and how to access capital and knowing what kind they need and how to work with investors, which I suspect is also true of a lot of people in any startup situation who haven't done this before, haven't been surrounded by entrepreneurs. But certainly one of the things we hear a lot is access to bank debt can be a challenge for early stage companies. But Casper, you mentioned something about, I jotted down that your first bank loan was, you got funding from ING, I think you said. The bottom line is, so how did you access bank loans when you were starting and growing your business? Like, how did you meet the requirements, which can be somewhat daunting for a lot of early stage companies and founders?
Yeah, so just to kind of clarify that point, so like the way that our business works is we partner with financial institutions like banks, and basically we've created a model where they entrust us essentially as like their asset manager, right, to lend their capital out to consumers, and we're managing credit strategy, we're managing servicing, all that stuff. So there's definitely a lot of kind of requirements we have to meet, but we're not getting loans from the banks, for the business. But with that being said, the ING story is a good one as a starting point. And I think that for us, it's, I think there's a theme here, right? Like it's all about relationships at the end of the day. When you're small, you really have to get people to believe in your idea, your vision, your model. And we were lucky to connect with the CEO of ING Direct at the time, and basically pitched him and sold him on the concept of, kind of being a lender on our program. And, it was a top-down decision from the leader of the entire organization to do a pilot with us. And their view was, okay, we'll start with $10 million. If we lose all the money, then it's not the end of the world for us, right? But if it's successful, it's an innovation project for us, and we'll kind of see where it goes from there. So we did have to build out all of the technology requirements, compliance requirements. We had to hire all the right people, right, to make sure that we met their kind of bank regulatory pass-through obligations, right? So we ended up hiring like a head of risk and head of compliance. We had to invest a lot in the back end, right, to make sure the technology stack and the separation of funds and all that stuff was mapped out, and the actual loan funding process, the experience included controls around AML and ID verification and all sorts of fun stuff. But that investment was worth it, because as we scaled and grew, because of the investment we made in being bank compliant, we were able to convince other banks to work with us, right? So 4 other banks and financial institutions. But yeah, it's really about building your organization longer term if you want to work with banks. And I think that in the fintech space, bank partnerships really are what's emerged as kind of the model. When fintech first started, it was like, oh, fintech's going to disrupt banking, and that didn't happen. It was really partnership models have proven to be the way forward. Banks have access to cheap capital, but they're not good at innovation and growth. And so that partnership really makes sense. And so long term, working with banks and beyond that, getting that first initial point, it really is about building out your organization as an entrepreneur to make sure you meet the minimum requirements and can inspire confidence in your counterparties, right, as partners.
Right.
So we have people at finance who came from the banks, like our head of risk came from Scotiabank, our head of compliance came from ING, our head of operations came from HSBC.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people
sort of had you had good relationships in the banking sector.
For sure. And, and there's a lot of really talented people in financial institutions, deep skill sets, who want to work in maybe more innovative space. So I think that's there's always going to be actually a ton of talent that are looking to join. So that's really the journey for us.
Thank you. Great. I have a question, an audience question that I want to get to, and then I'm going to switch to rapid fire last wrap up because we're getting close to time. But I think this one's really going to be for Lauren. But actually, I think Casper and Melissa might have other points of view. So the question I want to zero in on is, how much equity should a company who's fundraising for the first time be prepared to give up in the first round? Is there a rule of thumb? And I know, I'm sure Casper will say as little as possible. But yeah, Lauren.
So the rule of thumb is roughly 20 to 25%, as we would say, post money. So if you are raising some of your early rounds, so pre-seed, seed, Series A sort of falls into this category for sure. As you get more mature, the numbers start to change a little bit. But there's some basic math that sort of goes into, you have to figure out how much you need to raise, which is based on how much money will it require for your company to get to the milestones it needs to get to raise its next round. And then reverse engineer, okay, it's $1 million. And you want that million to make up no more than 20 to 25% of the post-money valuation of your company. So that means roughly 4 million ish, 3 to 4 million pre-money on a valuation. Now, if you can get a higher valuation from an investor, good for you.
All the better.
But generally, that's the math, 20 to 25%.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're getting close to time. So I want to ask you if you had to sum up, for people who are either already involved in the innovation space or about to get involved, either founders or joining a startup or becoming an investor. I'm going to give you less than a minute each to sum up. What is the one piece of advice, and you can decide who you want to direct it to, but what is the one piece of advice you would give somebody, either a founder joining a startup, an early stage, leaving their cushy bank job to join a startup like Finance It, for example, or an investor? What is the one thing you think people should know? I'm going to ask who wants to start, who feels ready to answer that. I'll start with whoever raises their Casper.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got 60 seconds, or no, you got 50 seconds actually, because I need to hand it back to John.
So I would just say there's one word that has always come to mind when I think about this, and it's perseverance. 9 out of 10 startups fail. If you give up, you fail. If you don't give up and you keep working and just find a way to push through, that is the number one quality that I would say defines the difference between success and failure, right? And
love it.
we've been long enough where we've seen a lot of businesses unfortunately fail, but we've seen the businesses that have also stuck around. There's just one interesting rule I thought about, which is, we were kind of going on year 12 post this sale, and including for myself and a lot of the team, we were asked to double down and continue operating this business with a new private equity firm. And after a bunch of thought, we all decided to, and we were very lucky. The entire team doubled down and continued on.
Great. Okay,
And
thank you. I need to leave time for the other two, so.
Okay.
Did you have a last word to say before I
was just going to say that there's an interesting data point that I saw that was part of that decision point, which is the majority of the value creation for startups actually happens after year 10.
Okay.
So if you look at the trajectory of most companies, that have really reached like multi-billion-dollar phase, it's actually between years 10 and 20 where the majority of the value creation happens.
Okay, so persevere. Past 10 years. Okay, you got to put at least a decade in. Love it. Melissa? Oh, did you want to?
I'll let Lauren go.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Lauren. Go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, there's so many things you could choose, but
pick one. You've got like 30 seconds.
Relationships.
Okay, perseverance followed by relationships. Love it.
And it's also focused on longevity.
Yeah.
And that and my current role is a great testament to that. When I first met Michelle McBain, I couldn't have predicted the way our relationship would develop, and that I'd end up getting to work with her and build out stand-up ventures. This is a very relationships-based space, and people have long memories.
Don't burn your bridges.
Well, but also people like to help each other.
Yeah.
I find it very collaborative. So
nice.
Work on your relationships.
Thank you. Love it. And Melissa, you get the final word.
Yes, I'm going to go from the perspective of startups. And a little similar to Lauren, I would say the team. I think the team that we're going to have is going to be a huge determining factor as to whether you stick things out when it gets rough. And another thing is passion. Sometimes I see founders build an idea just because they think it's lucrative, and they're not actually thinking about it before they go to bed. It needs to be something that you go to bed thinking about, wake up thinking about. It can't just be something you're doing because you think it's going to make money. And so I would say passion and the right team are definitely a great formula.
Thank you so much. I love it. Perseverance, relationships, passion, and hang out with the right people to get it done. And I think the team probably applies, from what I could hear, to the investors as well as the founders and entrepreneurs. Thank you for that, John. Back to you. Thank you very much, panel.
Thanks, Sandra. I got chills hearing those responses. That was fantastic. So on behalf of the University of Toronto, a huge thank you first to you, Sandra, for your deft and thoughtful and skillful moderation. Very well done. And then a huge thank you to Lauren, Melissa, and Casper. I think everybody that was listening got some fantastic insights for their own entrepreneurial journeys. I love hearing from entrepreneurs and investors because it informs the work that we do at UTE. So huge thank you for sharing your time and expertise with the audience. I'd also like to thank TD Insurance and Manulife for their support of the Disruptors and Dilemmas speaker series through the U of T Affinity Partner Program. And then finally, I want to thank everyone of you at home or wherever you might be that is watching for your support as vital and key members of the U of T community. I'd encourage you to circle March the 6th to the 9th on your calendars for U of T Entrepreneurship Week. This is our celebration of all things entrepreneurship across the tri-campus, and we expect to be hosting 15 plus events, a blend of in-person, virtual, hybrid, including our annual startup prize pitch competition and the True Blue Expo, where you can connect with over 40 of the university's top startups, maybe identify some investment ready companies for Lauren and others. And then also you can sign up for UTE's newsletter to stay up to date, not only on Entrepreneurship Week, but other opportunities within our ecosystem. And with that, on behalf of the U of T, I hereby adjourn our discussion. And whether you're near or far, we're so thankful that you were able to join us, and we wish you every success with your own entrepreneurial pursuits. Have a fantastic day, everyone.
Thank you.